Frank Gehry is one of the world's most famous architects. You know him from his museum in Spain or the concert hall here in Los Angeles. Now in Los Angeles, you don't think of it having a downtown, and yet this building has single-handedly given Los Angeles an identity. Do you think a new building can transform a city? Well, I don't know about that, but a great building like this one can give a city a confidence that it can do anything. This is the Cleveland Clinic Lou Ruvo Center for Brain Health, and it was designed by Frank Gehry and Partners in Las Vegas. A world-class clinic for the study and treatment of Alzheimer's disease, the center demonstrates how an architect can change not only the skyline, but the way healthcare is delivered. The building has three parts: a clinical wing that's a jumble of boxes with patient rooms, labs, and offices, a sculpted event center framed by a cafe and community room, and a roof trellis that covers and connects the other two spaces. The Ruvo Center was conceived as a symbolic gateway to a part of Las Vegas that's rapidly changing. It's not one of Frank Gehry's largest projects, but it is one of his most complex. Now, normally when we think of Las Vegas, we think of the Vegas Strip. But there's also a section that looks a lot like other cities. 4 miles from the Strip is downtown Las Vegas, which is where the Ruvo Center is located. There's a lot of open space to build on, and that makes it ideal for urban renewal. Enter Larry Ruvo, who had a dream to build a center that would study and treat Alzheimer's.
I'd started with a local architect, had a building designed, showed the model at one of our fundraisers, and I just didn't get any traction.
A successful Nevada entrepreneur, Larry and his wife Camille created the Keep Memory Alive Foundation in 1996 to honor his father, who passed away from Alzheimer's.
Well, I was an only child. Truly, my father was my best friend.
So when the first design for a clinic fell flat, Larry reached out to one of the world's most famous architects, Frank Gehry. Gehry Partners is located in a nondescript part of Santa Monica, California. The office is in a large warehouse that has the quality of a messy art studio. Frank Gehry can pick and choose what he wants to design and where. But Larry Ruvo was determined to have Gehry design his clinic.
I went in, and Frank was sitting in his chair, and he looked up at me, and I said, "Mr. Gehry, it's a pleasure to meet you." And he looks up at me and he says, "I'm not building a building in Las Vegas."
Lou Ruvo was ironically very much like Frank Gehry, very direct.
And I said, basically, who the hell are you to allow me to come down here, waste my time? You could have told me that on the phone.
And Frank Gehry goes, "Sit down." And it's just sit down. And they sat down, and 3 hours later, they were still in the meeting together.
That first 4.5 contentious minutes turned into a love fest.
So where was the turning point? After 4.5 minutes, what began to turn him to your side?
We talked about my father. We talked about what I saw. We talked about what I dreamed.
Well, I'd love to see your concept sketch for the Ruvo Center.
Oh, God. I can't remember what I did. And then we wanted a center, and I had to join them somehow. I made a courtyard.
And this is really the public view from this perspective. That's
Well,
what
the
people
road
see.
goes around here.
Right. And it looks like this.
If you look at a painting, there is an immediacy. And if you look at Rembrandt, hundreds of years later, it's still there, that feeling of he just touched it. I love that quality.
Frank Gehry begins a new design with rough, childlike sketches.
And it was amazing. He was thinking. And he sat there thinking, and he picked up a piece of crepe paper, and he actually twisted it and threw it. And as it landed, he says, "That's the way it's going to look." And Larry and myself looked at each other. I said, "I don't know, maybe somebody's nuts around here."
We made a lot of models
Next come wood blocks. Each color represents a different use.
It was complicated. He had a lot of models, a lot of stuff going in the waste paper basket.
Once the functional relationships are established, the models get more complex.
Some of the earlier models were more fluffy, were more cloud-like, and almost more predictable.
Most firms, they don't bother with the interiors. But Gehry explores those too.
As we had to pare away and cut it to get it into a reasonable budget and take volume out of it, we did it in a way that wasn't predictable.
After looking at every possibility, the final shape emerges.
If you're looking at chess moves, visual chess moves, you don't know what my next move might be. You look at it for 100 years, you wouldn't know.
Frank Gehry and Larry Ruvo agreed that the final design had to be attention-grabbing. They called it the mouse that roared. It was now time to show off the finished model to the public.
I said, we're going to unveil something to you that is going to change the course of a disease. I'm going to use Frank's celebrity to bring international, not national, international attention to Las Vegas.
The model was unveiled there, and Frank Gehry was there, Larry Ruvo was there, and other dignitaries. And they lifted off the veil, and you looked at it, and you said, oh my.
To ready the plans for construction, Gehry uses a powerful software called CATIA, a program originally created to design fighter planes. Though it's only about 65,000 square feet, it took 3 years to build. That's about twice as long as a more conventional building. Gehry's sources are never literal. It's been said that he drew inspiration from the cubic massing of Moroccan hillside villages and the sand dunes of the desert. You decide. Now, believe it or not, the building's actually organized in a pretty straightforward way. On one hand, you have the clinical area, and on the other, you have the event center. And in between that, you've got this covered roof trellis. This is where the front entrance is. Passing through, you reach an outdoor courtyard that separates the clinic and the event center. Flanking the event center is the cafe and a community room. The outdoor court, which is covered by a roof trellis, leads to a meditation garden. People call this the rational part of the building. It's got patient rooms, offices, clinical areas. Now, typically, these spaces want to be a bit more boxy. You don't want to have the kind of curvy rooms that you see in the event center. Now, what's interesting about it is that buildings like that often can be a bit boring. Now, what Gehry does, to wonderful effect, is takes those boxes and begin to rotate them this way and that way. That's why you get these wonderful shadows really kind of animating the facade. This is the event space in the Ruvo Center. It's a 75-foot high space, all white interiors with 199 windows. Now, the windows are on all sides, on the walls and on the ceilings. And in Las Vegas, where the sun is ever present, it means that natural light will animate the space all day long. With so much glass, there was a concern about overheating. In response, Gehry added sensors to each window that automatically pull down shades when a certain temperature is reached. In an event space, you want it to be as free and open as possible, but what do you do with the structure? Well, in this case, the columns take the form of these tree shapes. And what happens is you get this big trunk which begins to rise up and branch out. Those branches begin to pick up the different loads from the different roof lines. And what's so neat is that these branches here, that don't reach the structure here, they actually have ventilation in them. So really what you're seeing is the integration of mechanical and structural engineering. Now, when you design a world-class building like this one, you need a world-class team. You've got an architect from Los Angeles that then sends drawings to Germany, where they're engineered. Now, those drawings are then sent to China, where these panels, these structural panels, are fabricated. And finally, those panels are shipped back to the United States, where they're assembled by a Las Vegas contractor. Underneath this titanium shingle is the steel structure and the 544 unique pieces of steel that make up the building. Get it wrong when you're building it, you have a disaster on your hands. So how do they do it? Well, each piece of steel has a unique barcode on it, and that barcode tells the builder exactly where each piece has to go.
The brief was to make something that wasn't there. So that's what we tried to do. I'm curious why somebody hasn't copied it already and made it 10 times bigger.
So I'd love to see your most favorite part of the building.
Whoa, where's your favorite? This building has so many. I won't show you one because I don't have just one.
Open since 2010, the Ruvo Center for Brain Health pursues its goals of patient treatment and research.
The people came and they looked at this building. They knew that we were serious. It's a calling card. This is a marketing tool. This is what I said. I wanted to use Frank's celebrity. And that's his celebrity right there. That's what Frank Gehry does. He's a sculptor. He's an architect sculptor. Now, most important, that what goes on inside is as good as the outside, and that's what's happened.
How old are you now?
How old are you, Al? There's been a change for the better. Not that he remembers so much, but
Right.
he does know me. And what I'm so grateful is that he will wake up in the morning and he'll say, "I love you," which before that didn't happen.
When I took my father down to San Diego to see Dr. Thal, we were waiting about 45 minutes to an hour in his waiting room. While we were there were 3 patients. One gentleman was in diapers, the other man was in a wheelchair, and the other man couldn't keep his head up. And my dad's looking at me and he says, "Is this where I'm headed?" Because he was very early in the disease. And I said, "No, Dad, these people are here, this doctor sees for a lot of other diseases, they have something else, not what you have." And countless times I've said that conversation with my father, scarred me for life, knowing that I had to lie to my dad, and that's exactly where he was headed. But it taught me that we don't need to have patient waiting rooms. Who wants to see something like that? Who wants to experience that?
It's a simple innovation, but there's no waiting room. Patients check in and go straight to their assigned room. And when they leave, they go out a separate exit.
We will either find a cure because of this building, or we will find a cure in this building.
The first moment I walked in the door and saw the light coming through those windows, it was magical, I thought. I like the space between the buildings. I like the elevation of the medical part from the parking lot on the other side. I think a lot of successful things. There's things I wish I'd done differently.
Like what? What would you
know.
change now?
I don't know.
Well, everybody, welcome to the Cleveland Clinic Lou Ruvo Center for Brain Health. Las Vegas is a very exciting city, and I think we're all lucky to live here. To host anything here is one of my proudest moments. The only negative is with all these great hotels is trying to do something a little different when you want to get the world's attention. For me, it took Frank Gehry.
Well, I'd like to do more things with him, if we could figure it out.
He said one more. He said I want to do one more.
I want to do 2 more.
Okay, you do more. He said you over-delivered. He said it many times.
Whenever I go into the event center, certain things happen to me. I stop, I pause, I look around, and I say to myself, what was he thinking? And then I smile and say, what a really cool place this is.
What I told Frank Gehry, you're taking the single most important thing I have, which is my name and my father's name. Do right by it. Well, he did.